Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the Achieving Unity podcast. I am excited for you to be here. But as we know, in the United States on Monday, November 11th, 2024, we will all gather to honor and express our deepest gratitude to the brave men and women who have served in the United States Armed Forces. I think we have all benefited from this all around the world. We had soldiers from Canada, we have had soldiers from probably every country, every continent that was working with us. It has been just a tremendous process around the world of the brave men and women who have served in the United States Armed Forces. Our veterans have made immense sacrifices to protect the freedoms and the values that we all hold dear that allow us to be here today. On Veterans Day, which again is Monday, November 11th, we will recognize the courage, dedication, and resilience of our veterans, their unwavering commitment that ensures that we can enjoy the liberties and opportunities that define freedom around the world, not just in the United States. So, to all veterans, at the beginning of our podcast today and forevermore, we say thank you. No matter where you live, if it's the United States or anywhere else around the world, thank you for gaining and maintaining our freedoms. Your service and sacrifices have not gone unnoticed, and we are forever grateful. Let us continue to support and stand by our veterans, not just today, not just Monday, but every day, as they have stood by us. Thank you to each and every veteran alive and past, alive today and the past previously. Thank you all so much. Okay, we'll get started in the podcast. Creating solutions one reality at a time. And that's what we want to work on in our process of achieving unity through the power of encouraging, inspiring, and including others personally and professionally. What you see on the screen right now is my podcast, www.markandtricken.com. And let me go into a little bit more about what I do, what we do going forward. Number one, our Achieving Unity weekly podcast. Right now, it's every Thursday in 2024 if it's not a U.S. holiday. In a few weeks, the U.S. will have the Thanksgiving holiday. We will not broadcast on that date. I may put a recording out if I can through Zoom, if they allow me to do that, but we will not have a live podcast on Thursday for Thanksgiving Day. In 2025, we will be moving to Wednesdays. I will have courses that will be on Thursdays and Fridays. So we'll move the podcasts from the Thursdays they are now to Wednesdays at the same time, 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern time, starting in January. Hope you all continue to come and enjoy. As I mentioned, from reality-focused dynamics to the success-focused solutions that we create, please contact us today for more information on several of the things that we focus and commit to. Number one is using Agile and Lean outside of software. Many of you may not have heard of it, but if you've been in engineering, the philosophy can be used in every discipline, every vertical, including in our homes. Agile is the ability to create and respond to change, enabling success in an uncertain and possibly struggling environment by emphasizing adaptability through better collaboration and communication. And I hope you see that that's where I am based, personally and professionally, into that adaptability of learning and growing in what we do. Lean is a methodology that's focused on maximizing value by minimizing waste. And oh, do we have so much waste in the world today? But instead, we optimize our processes through continuous improvement, effectiveness, and efficiency. But we must be effective first. Connect with me and I'll show you how to break all products and services down from the most complex business projects to the basic steps of training our teenagers. And yes, I have worked on our rocket ships, so I know the difference. But so much of what we do, from the rocket ships to our teenagers to 2-year-olds, is still related. Think of busy mornings at a family breakfast. Everyone has somewhere to go, from work to school to events to just many locations. Have a family stand-up meeting, and this comes from the Agile Scrum. That morning stand-up meeting, have it in the evening where everyone shares their task for the next day. Use sticky notes with chores and responsibilities. You can place them on the refrigerator where each person can then have their chore and then move it to done once that task is done. Create a breakfast station in the morning with pre-portioned ingredients and a weekly meal plan. Whether you make something previously or you just have cereal, each person has their set meal ahead of them. That minimized decision fatigue and reduced time spent searching for items that morning can help everyone join in on a smoother and more efficient process. What we're doing here today is achieving unity through encouragement, inspiration, and inclusion. When you talk to our wonderful speaker today, he will talk about making life better. And what we want to do is through encouragement, is take that powerful force that lies at the heart of empowerment and empowering others through that encouragement. Then we have unity that makes us a successful team, inspiring each other to reach every goal. There is no great invention that happened on its own. We always think about certain people when we think of inventions, would be electricity or anything else, but there were teams involved at the time to commit to it. That's where unity comes in. And then together we can overcome challenges to inclusion and celebrate every victory, both personally and professionally. It's what we do by achieving unity. And then for our relationships, they could be personal or professional, but facing those relationship challenges or parenting, if you are facing relationship challenges or parenting difficulties, let's think about this. Are you or someone you know struggling with those relationship issues, parenting time issues as a divorced or divorcing parent? Let's transform that frustration into understanding with what the frustration? Where is the value in our actions and where does frustration lead us? Talk more about this later. We have to learn that anger holds no value. Anger is nothing more than actions not gaining effective results. ANGER. Actions not gaining effective results. There's no value to anger, and there's no reason to be angry. From personal relationships to prenuptial agreements, nuptial not required because we're not getting married as much anymore, but we can still make personal agreements. Life happens. Let's learn to embrace and enjoy every moment together, being totally honest, upfront. Don't hold things back. Let's be transparent. If you'd like to find out more from our website, Achieving Unity Through the Power of Encouraging, Inspiring, and Including Others personally and professionally, here are my QR codes. The one on the left is my website home. The one on the right is my website contact page. Let me know if you have any questions anytime. Upcoming guest. Of course, we'll talk to our special guest today. I'll introduce him in just a couple of screens. Next week, Tara Woodley, the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. It's amazing what we've done over the years. We've improved, but to think a century ago, centuries ago, even 10 or 20 years ago, a couple of decades back, the violence against women has been astronomical. We're building better today, and that's what we're doing with Achieving Unity. But Tara will come next week and talk to us more about that. My friend Larry does not look like he's going to be able to make it for the National Play Day with Dad, so I'm looking for some more people. I contacted about 5 this morning, so we'll be on top of that. But on 11/21 is our National Play Day with Dad, where fathers a lot of times aren't taught when they were young because of breakups or whatever. They admit it. They don't know how to be a good dad. They didn't have that teaching. We will work with them and just build all of us going forward. Thanksgiving, as I mentioned, on the 11/28, November 28th, we will not have a live podcast. We have Black awareness, the abolition of slavery, then and now, what we have done, as awareness of our different, just say people, because the only race, and I hope you're reading my newsletter. My newsletter just came out today, but the only race is the human race. Red, yellow, black, brown, or white, we all need to be professional in each other's sight. Work together. But that's what we talk about on 12/5. 12/12 is a Human Rights Day. And I'm talking about 20 different people right now for both of those events. So please come back. Have questions? Let me know. And here we are. our special guest today, close friend of mine. We've been friends for a little while now, and it has been just a great friendship. I've learned a lot from him, but Morry Zelcovitch, the creator of the Morry method of TMM. He first noticed the effects that sounds and tone had on his own his mental state or slate, well over 20 years ago. This led to a decades-long journey deep into the study of brainwave entrainment. It's a brainwave entrainment, word that he made up himself. Not satisfied with the minor results that he experienced, well, Morry has sought out the world's foremost brainwave entrainment experts, and after extensive study and training, became one of the few certified brainwave entrainment engineers around the world, in our world. From that impressive starting point, and with ongoing study and research, Morry has developed proprietary technology and techniques which he has named the Morry method. Please help me welcome Morry Zelcovitch. Morry, how's your day going?
Terrific, Mark. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to let people know that this technology is simple, that it exists, and anyone can use it to help themselves, to make themselves better, happier, stronger, faster. Anything they want, really.
That's excellent. I mean, just working with you, uh, it's more on just a day-to-day basis to see the happiness that you bring forward, and then to hear about what you've been through, the training that you've gone through, and what you brought forward. It's amazing. So, can maybe just start out? I touched on your story just a little bit. Tell us more. How did you get into this? Tell us about your story. What started? How did this all come about?
Yeah, so I actually didn't have a choice. I, as long as I can remember, I have been suicidal and
So
literally
sorry.
wanting to be dead. No, don't be. I'm kind of grateful, actually, to it all. When I have a chance to look at it, in the rearview mirror, so to speak, I'm happy that I was so miserable, if that makes sense.
It's
Uh,
tough. Tell me more. That's very interesting.
yeah, so basically, I'd wake up every morning and I'd cross my fingers and I would look out the window and I would wish I would see mushroom clouds. Because as far as I can remember, there were at least 6 suicide attempts that I made. I never reached out for help. I just wanted to end my life. I walked around repeating this affirmation in my mind all the time. Life is a disease for which there is no cure but death. That's how I felt about life. I'd see people smiling and laughing, and I smiled and laughed too, but I was faking it. I was trying to fit in, and I never really fit in. I kind of think of myself as an alien life form that was left here, and I'm not supposed to be here. This isn't my planet. This isn't my world. You're not my people. I know I kind of look human. I'm not going to say I do look human, but I kind of look human. But I've never felt human. And to be frank, even now I don't feel human. But I'm a lot more comfortable in who I am and who I feel like I should be. And I do feel like I have a place here. And I feel like I'm supposed to be here. And I feel like the torturous beginnings, those first 40 years of my life, were there on purpose. They were there to teach me something that I couldn't learn any other way. Because despite what a lot of people think about me, I'm not overly smart. If I was smart, it wouldn't have taken me 40 years and 6 suicide attempts to realize that I don't actually really want to die.
That
But
is amazing, More. If you don't mind me interrupting, just because that
no,
part right there that you're talking about, that, and again, you are very intelligent because I've talked to you. I know you're intelligent, but again, it seems to me, and I hope you can touch a little bit more on this, that sometimes there's that gap of information. Somewhere along the way, there's that gap, and why is somebody laughing, and why is laughing to me? Why does it not feel like it should feel? Right?
well, I guess. I mean, I didn't know how it should feel, of course. But there was a point through most of it where I kind of thought everybody was like me, which is one of the reasons why I never reached out for help. When I eventually did reach out for help, I went to doctors and clinicians and psychiatrists and psychologists. And I don't think they believed me. because I guess I was just too matter of fact when I said everything. Should I have been crying or breaking down or throwing things? Maybe, I don't know. I just didn't have the energy. I just said, what happened and what I did. And they basically looked at me and said, there's not much we can do for you. I mean, you seem to be coping really well. So I kind of equated not succeeding at killing myself as a coping strategy, according to the doctors. So that was the first stage. The second stage was looking at alternative medicines, so homeopaths and osteopaths and massage therapists and chiropractors and anybody else who might have something to do with physical structures and how they integrate with the psychology and our well-being or sense of well-being. Got no help there either. Now, please understand, I'm not bad-mouthing doctors or chiropractors or anybody. I think they're fantastic personally. It's just if for whatever reason it was part of my journey to experience, but not to gain benefit. So I tried other things. I thought, okay, well, I'll try drugs, alcohol, and sex addiction. So I was addicted to drugs, I was addicted to alcohol, and I was addicted to sex addiction. And actually, none of those made me feel better either. They actually made it worse. And I went going and going, and then I started trying everything I could find. I was looking for electronic devices and meditation and EMDR, the eye positioning stuff and breathing techniques, and none of that helped me either. And I was starting to think that I might be Adolf Hitler reborn, and this is my time to suffer, considering all the suffering I caused others in a previous life.
Hmm.
And it struck me, though, that as I'm trying all these things and getting more depressed, see, I went through what I call depression and then super depression. So when I was feeling good, I was actually very depressed. When I was
Wow.
feeling bad, I was what I called super depressed. And I ended up thinking that just trying things randomly as I come across them isn't working for me. So I thought, well, maybe I need to educate myself. So I went somewhere that I call the paper internet. And anyone under like, I guess, 20 years old is, or even 25 years old, is probably not going to know what I mean, but it's a library because that's what the internet was for my era. It was people going to a building with a lot of books. And I started studying things like neurology papers and neurochemical journals and psychology and perception and quantum physics. And yes, quantum physics was a thing back then. And I started gaining an understanding of what might be going on in my brain, in my mind, in my head. And as I was learning, I was trying other things, even stranger things and weirder things, and still getting no results. Eventually, because this is only an hour show and I don't want to go for 12 hours, might as well go to the end now. I came across this thing called brainwave entrainment. And I know you gave me credit for coming up with the word entrainment. Unfortunately, not my, I don't get credit for that. That's actually a
See, I'm
process of
sorry. I thought I read that somewhere. My apologies. A
no,
little gap
that's
on my
okay.
side, but
That's
uh,
okay. That's actually a phrase from physics. And what it basically means is one thing following another thing.
hmm.
So the entrainment aspect is I create audio and visual stimulation techniques, pulsed beats, as it were, or flickering lights and imagery that cause your neurons, which are your brain cells, to follow those frequencies. And depending on the location of the neuron in your head and what frequency it's pulsing its little electric beat at, that denotes the kind of state it's in. So most of us have heard of alpha, beta, theta, delta, gamma. All those are is they're really just definitions of how many times that neuron is pulsing in a second. And the neuron doesn't pulse like a heart pulses, or like a lung inflates and deflates. It pulses an electric pulse, like almost like a laser shooting a beam out so many times a second. And why that's important is my chemistry. This is what I kind of came down to. It must be my chemistry that's out of balance, that's having a problem. Because it turns out, in my understanding, that it's your chemistry that translates it into your experience. So your neuron pulses so many times a second, it creates endorphins and hormones and neurotransmitters, and all of that kind of blends together to make a soup. And if the soup tastes good, your life is good. And if the soup tastes like crap, like mine did, then your life sucked. And
What
that's
an
your
interesting
experience.
example.
Yeah. So I learned all these things and I started experimenting. And when I found entrainment, it ticked all the boxes. And I was so grateful. I was thinking, finally, after 40 years of looking, I found something that might help me. And it didn't do anything. But something stuck in my head that it should have done something. And the more it stuck in my head, the more I started conceptualizing that, you know what? I feel the way I feel. I've gone through what I've gone through because I was supposed to find entrainment and evolve it, change it. That's the thing. It's never changed from when it was initially thought of when it comes to mind science. It's the same as it's always been for decades, maybe 100 years or more. I was supposed to feel the way I felt so that I could come across it and then change it and evolve it and make it different. And when I did that, I started feeling better, like literally from the very first time I used it. It
Okay,
wasn't long, it was just a few minutes, but it helped.
tell me about better. You said you're feeling better. How?
So, anger, joy, anxiety, depression, it's all neurochemical reaction. So you could walk up to me, Mark, slap me in the face, my head could fly off to the side here and fly back. But if my brain doesn't create chemistry that acknowledges that event happened, I won't know that I was slapped. I won't register that sound. I won't register that my eyes are now seeing different things. None of that would be acknowledged by me because I wouldn't have the app, if you will, that acknowledges that these things happened, the sensors, if you will. So when I said I feel better, I believe what was happening was, and again, I have no evidence to this. This is just my scientific guesswork at play here, that my chemistry was altered enough that I was able to experience something differently than I was used to experiencing it. Because again, it's my understanding that it's your chemistry that allows you to experience anything. Are you turned on? Are you turned off? All these things are neurochemical reactions. In my view, my chemistry was bad. It tasted bad. It brought on bad feelings. The thing is, your thoughts create chemistry too. So my thoughts, which were perpetually negative, I mean, life is a disease for which is no cure but death. That's not exactly a positive Hallmark greeting card. so so I actually, and you'll notice I can laugh about all of this, and I don't have any emotional attachment. To be frank, the more I tell this story, the more it feels like a story to me. The less it feels like it was me because it really wasn't me. It was a previous version of me. It was Morry 3.6 or something. And now I'm at Morry 50.7 or whatever I'm at now.
Okay.
So it almost feels like I'm making it up. That's how far away it was for me.
Okay. I think some of the things you're talking about here is some of the maybe the science behind brainwave techniques. What what did you do first? I mean, like you're talking what you went through some of these very negative, some of these terrible soups as you're talking about them.
Sure. So you want
What
to know what kind of tweaked me over to the light side?
what led you to that next step?
I was on a camping trip with friends. How I had friends, don't ask me, because I was not a good person. I was a selfish person. I was a miserable person. Uh, but I was on a camping trip with friends, and the thing is, I could only sleep if I was wasted.
Hmm.
So, camping trip, bunch of teenagers and it's guys in their 20s. We were partying pretty heavily. Well, they all went to bed. They all took off, and I was still sitting around outside the campfire. And I had rolled myself a real big fat joint that I figured would take me about half an hour to smoke because I was just me now, right? I'm drinking beer
Right.
and I'm smoking pot. And I started smoking it and it was done. And I looked at my watch getting ready because I started hearing like birds chirping and stuff. Oh, that's weird. And it was like 4 or 5 hours later. That had never happened before. You can imagine anyone who's ever felt depressed for 5 seconds knows how slow those 5 seconds pass. And I kind of feel like I'm almost 1,000 years old now because go 40 years in deep depression. time does not pass fast. So I
Wow.
literally feel like I've been alive 1,000 years. When I suddenly experienced time passing quickly, because like I said, it felt like half an hour, but it was 3, 4, 5 hours. That right away got me
Amazing.
excited. Yeah, well, first I got scared because I had never experienced it before. But then I thought, well, wait a minute, I can feel differently. This is the first time time has flown for me ever. Every other time it crawls like a snail. And I started thinking, so what was happening? What was happening? I need to understand this. I need to figure out what's going on. The only noises I heard were the fire. I wasn't even looking at it because I had my head buried in my lap
You're
like
talking
this.
about the campfire there where
Yeah,
okay.
right. But I couldn't see the fire really. So it wasn't the visual experience, but the wood was really dry. And if anyone knows wood when it's dry, there's little air pockets and they go pop, 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 pop. And I thought, well, maybe it was the popping sound, almost like popcorn, right? I go,
Hmm.
maybe it was this popping sound. So when I got back from the trip, I went to the library and I started investigating how sound or the perception of sound or beats affects human neurology and psychology and perception. And I found that there was something in that. And that's what eventually led me to the entrainment, because entrainment uses sound and sometimes light or imagery to alter or create that same kind of stimulation. Everyone here has experienced entrainment, by the way, whether they've used my recordings or somebody else's or have never even heard of it before. If you've ever listened to music and you like a song and you're bopping your head mindlessly and tapping your toes without trying to, that's a form of entrainment. That's your body is entraining to the music, to the beat of the music. If you've ever driven a car, especially late at night or during the day, and you kind of don't remember driving, there's an experience called highway hypnosis where the flickering happens from the white lines on the street as you're driving by, and it's a line and then no line and a line and no line. That creates a state of entrainment, otherwise known as highway hypnosis, that kind of takes you out of what you're doing and puts you into a slightly altered state. So this is something everyone
Hmm.
can do, whether they want to or not, as a matter of fact. And most people have experienced it. I just focus it on your brain, your neurons, so that it makes you more efficient and alters your neurochemistry just enough so that you can see and feel a difference.
That is so impressive. And I would never thought about the sound waves for that. So you heard the sound, you've seen a difference. Next step.
And that's what got me excited because I had never seen a difference before. I'd never felt a difference. And by the way, I didn't hear anything. Neither do you. Neither do I. I don't believe there's a life form on this planet that's actually ever heard anything. There's an old line, riddle. If a tree, and I'll ask you, you just
Hmm.
answer yes or no. So if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, does it make a noise? Yes or no?
Yes.
Great. Now, if a tree falls in the forest and someone is there to hear it, does it make a noise? Yes or no?
Yes.
It does not in either case. The real answer is no, it does not make a noise. What it does is it creates vibration. That vibration, if it's picked up by something with an auditory nerve or an auditory canal or some kind of auditory structure that can sense vibration, that vibration gets picked up. It gets translated by various regions of the brain into what we call sound. So there actually is no such thing as sound. I did not create a clapping sound there. What you heard was nothing. Your brain simply interpreted that vibration as that sound. And actually, Mark, everybody's listening to you on this podcast. If they could all take an SD card and stick it in their ear and record
Right.
how they hear your voice. Okay. So they're not recording it like I'm holding up my phone and I'm recording it, but I'm recording it the way I hear you. Okay. And I use that term loosely. Then each person's recording of your voice will be slightly different. That's because
Yeah.
everybody's brain is going to have a slight difference in how they interpret the vibration that is being caused by your voice.
Is that the same thing as when we're talking, when I listen to myself on a recording, I sound different than I do to myself right now.
Well, part of that is because of the origin of the sound. So when I'm
Okay.
talking, sound is coming out and it's going out here and it's going here and it's coming back around, and the position of my ears. When I hear myself through a speaker, the sound is coming exclusively from here. Okay. Like if you talk, just put your hand over your cheeks or over your throat and say something.
Just say anything.
You felt vibration, right?
Sure.
So what you hear is a function of that vibration as well. It's the vibration of the different fibers in your ears and in your cheeks and in your skin and in your head and in your shoulders and in your arms. Everything vibrates to a degree. You know, words have incredible power. There's a lot of theories out there that say that people don't pay enough attention to the power of the words they use. Because literally, I mean, I can even feel because I'm aware of it, but you put your hand on your chest when you talk, you feel vibration. And even if you don't feel vibration on your toes, they are still being influenced by the vibratory effect of you speaking. So be very careful what you say and how you say it, because you can use the F word with a smile on your face, and it's going to have a very different
Different.
effect on you physiologically and psychologically than it will if you say it in anger.
Absolutely. But then let's have a little bit of fun here, if you don't mind, not challenging, but
Sure.
just I was in all of the science and math classes, what we used to call junior high. I think it's called middle school now. And we
Yeah.
talked about that story about the tree falling. And
Yeah.
that was why I came up. That's why I answered a few minutes ago with the answer that we came up with back years ago is when the tree falls, those vibrations still occur. The tree still hits the ground. And when
Yep.
those two interact, the vibration from that, what's the right
Event.
word, that, yeah, event still created a sound because the vibrations were still created. Those waves of
See,
sound are still there.
see, that's the thing. It's not sound waves. Sound waves is a misnomer. It's purely vibration, or you can call a sound wave vibration, but it still has to get interpreted by a receiver. It's like radio waves.
Interesting.
Just because you tune in a station doesn't mean that signal's suddenly there because you tuned it in. The signal's always there. It's just a matter, it's like Wi-Fi. You may not be using it, you're still exposed to it if it's in your area. Just
Hmm.
because your phone is the same thing. Just because you have a smartphone doesn't mean you're getting more Wi-Fi exposure. You're getting Wi-Fi exposure because you're in an area with Wi-Fi.
That's very similar
I don't
to,
believe,
go ahead.
look, I don't believe in truth and I don't believe in fact, because when I used to, it stopped me from thinking. Because why should I think about this if it's a fact? Why should I think about this if it's the truth? Now I think of everything as current understanding. And what you just said is a perfect example of current understanding as opposed to fact, because we are taught things as fact. We are taught things as truth. But go back a certain amount of time and you will find that other things were fact and other things were truth. But truth and fact can't change, meaning if it does change, it was never true or a fact to begin with, which means we've been mislabeling things as true and facts. The longer we're surviving as a species, the better our technology gets, the better our understanding gets, the better our knowledge base gets. And as these things all change, how we interpret what we see, feel, and experience is likely to change. That's why I go from the perspective of current understanding as opposed to knowledge. Because to me, knowledge doesn't exist. To me, someone who believes in something is actually closed minded. Now, it's not their fault they're closed minded. They're taught to be closed minded. I think there are certain people in this world that like us to believe things that aren't necessarily true because it keeps us in our place. And I'm not being, like conspiracy theorist here. I'm just
Right.
saying that, like, for instance, that whole Nike thing about I am, like affirmations, I am this, I am that, right? I don't believe in that because my
Y-
current understanding says if I say I have a full head of hair, well, it's pretty evident I don't. And the more I say it, the more that's going to actually become annoying and aggravating as opposed to beneficial. If I don't have a lot of money and I keep saying I am wealthy, I am rich, I have tons of money, I have tons of money, and then I can't buy groceries this week, or I'm worried about how I'm going to pay my taxes or how I'm going to pay my rent, That is sabotaging. But if someone tells you you are wealthy, but you don't have money, that sets off an automatic series of actions and reactions in the mind and in the brain that says, okay, I look at my bank account, I don't see that there, but so and so is telling me I am wealthy. So
Well,
what
that
are they
is a
seeing that I'm
definition of
not
wealth
seeing?
to them, though, right? That is
That's my
what
point.
they, okay.
Right. But it also helps you because you are getting trained and in trained from the outside in, not from the inside out. So we don't have any opinions when we're born. They're all formed based on our experience, based on the people around us. There's so many intricacies involved in what goes on in our lives and our perceptions that if we choose, and we can choose, to look at something from a different angle, then we will see something totally different. For example, what's this?
Looks like a
Now
mouse
it's easier
or,
to tell, right?
okay, right.
Now it's a
Mhm,
mouse. Now you weren't sure. It's all a
mhm,
matter of how you choose to look at something.
mhm.
Nothing is real, nothing is true, nothing is a fact. Everything exists. Look, quantum physics at its most basic level says nothing exists until it is observed. The thing with us humans is we don't just observe something, we give it meaning, we define it.
Okay, well, that's something
That
that's,
means that you're always right and I'm never wrong, even if we disagree on the same thing. Because in your universe, you're going based on your rules, your definitions. In my universe, I'm going based on my rules and my definitions. So we can
mhm.
look at the exact same thing and come up with totally different stories, and we're both right.
Well, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about some things today because PTSD, the post-traumatic stress disorder, and
Yeah.
OCD, and how those impact us. And then from what you're saying, the obsessive compulsive disorder, how do those, and I'm gonna go back to your sound. There's just so much more. We, like you said, we could talk for 60 hours, not 60 minutes. But
Yeah.
how do you relate the two? Because what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing is there's an understanding that we have. We're developing an understanding more than a fact. But when we
Yeah.
talk about people and have a close friend who served and was in the fire department, and now his mind's not working as yours and mine is, and he doesn't remember more than a few minutes, but yet he can still remember things that happened to him when he's young. That back
Yeah.
to the PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. How
Has he
does
been
that fit
diagnosed?
in?
Has he
Sorry,
been diagnosed with anything in, like specifically? Because that sounds
not
like something to me.
yeah, not that I have the information on today. I could
Okay.
find out, but
Yeah, maybe we could help. That would be
okay.
nice if we could. Yeah, there's different regions of the brain that are responsible for long-term memory and short-term memory. So there might be something going on with the regions responsible for short-term memory. A lot of people with cognitive issues like Alzheimer's can remember things from years and years and years ago,
Right,
but they won't remember their kid's name,
right.
or they won't remember what happened 10 seconds ago.
Mm,
So keep in mind, I'm self-trained neuroscientist. I'm not a doctor.
right,
So nothing I say is to be considered medical advice. Okay.
right. Can't hold it
But
against you.
yeah, but when it comes to something like that, it's a matter of there's so much, with AI and other things that are out there. There are so many possibilities now, you know, do searches. The one nice thing about the internet is this something that a lot of people think is a bad thing about the internet. The more you look for something, the more the internet feeds it to you, right? So people, if they're politically aligned to the right or the left or whatever, they'll tend to get stories that promote what they want to hear on either side of the
Mhm.
spectrum.
That's so
And then
true.
the other side, they'll get like, maybe you're right, maybe I'm left, maybe the other way around, whatever. But you'll get stuff that says my side is terrible and your side is wonderful. And I'll get saying your side is terrible and my side is wonderful. And is there any truth to any of it? Probably not. It's probably crap on both sides of the
It
spectrum.
probably is. Exactly. I do agree with
But
that.
but when it comes down to what is going on, there's so many new things. Like there's studies that are showing benefits of different scents, like menthol, for instance. just smelling menthol, having, those little vaporizer things that aerators that shoot out little essential
Right.
oils.
Hmm.
There's studies that show different essential oil scents help cognition, help memory. There's
So
different
different
food.
aromas. When you say the scent, you
Yeah,
want an aroma in a
yeah,
room. Okay.
yeah. Well, we already know that certain aromas bring about memory recall. Boy, that reminds me of something. Like, for me, if it's like butterscotch and vanilla smells, especially butterscotch for some reason. I don't know why, but it really elicits a response from the ancient times back when I was around with the dinosaurs. So, you know, but the thing is, there's a lot out there that your friend or his loved ones could be looking at. And the internet, when you start searching for alternate things, for modern research, because it doesn't have to be all alternate, all woo-woo stuff. There's legitimate research happening that is showing benefits. As an example, I have a system called Revitamind and Revitamind Ultra. And it was written up a little bit in a book called The End of Alzheimer's by Dr. Dale Bredesen. And it was on the New York Times bestsellers list, #1 for like 9 months.
Hmm.
And I have frequencies, literally recordings that you listen to, or some of them that you look at, that research is suggesting might help to clear out what's called the beta amyloid protein and the tau tangles. So beta amyloid protein, you could think of that as kind of like honey or something thick and gooey that's between the neurons, kind of blocking signals, making it difficult. And tau is something that happens, I believe, inside the neuron, which again gets in the way of signaling.
That's
And
interesting.
sleeping, like just improving your sleep, can help you, because sleep is a large function in clearing all these things out. Everybody gets them, by the way. It's when you lose the ability to get rid of them that they start building up and congesting and causing the problem. So if you can improve someone's sleep, there's reason to believe, and again, I'm not making promises, I'm not making claims, but there's reason to believe, and there is certain clinical evidence to show that these things could be beneficial. You would not, you would be amazed at the things out there that are simple, that anyone can do anytime, that might make a difference. Look, have you ever driven a car with rust that has rust on it?
Sure. I was
Do
born
you
a
think
Port au
the
Prince
rust,
child. That's what my first car was.
okay, so do you think the rust just showed up that day when you first saw it?
Oh no.
Of course, it was probably years forming underneath before the paint started bubbling, right?
All
And
right.
before you knew it was rusting. Well, humans do the same thing to themselves. Things like, and excuse me, Febreze, but I'll use you as an example. But these things, these commercials that say, plug this in and your room will smell beautiful, or put this in your laundry and 8 weeks later your clothes still stink. I say stink. They say smell good. But when people smell something, it's actually a particle that goes into the nose, and then sensors in the nose read that particle, and then you get the smell. So you're actually inhaling it. When you use Tide, that smell that Tide has,
Mhm.
that is horrible for you. Don't color your hair.
No,
Don't do anything like this. All these things are, in my opinion,
chemicals.
and again, I'm not a doctor, but they're rusting you out from the inside. So you won't know. You'll go, Morry, you're full of shit. I'm 75 years old. I'm 80 years old, and I'm not on any medicines. I'm walking around. I'm fine. Both my parents told me I'm full of shit. Both my parents got horribly sick within a year or two of having no pills, no medicines.
I'm sorry.
Well, it's okay. But you know what? People need to realize that just because they're killing themselves slowly doesn't mean they're not killing themselves. And people think, well, I'm older, these things happen. We get older, our lungs start to falter, our organs start to fail, our hair falls out, all this other crap.
Okay.
None of this stuff has to happen
Well, tell me, let me do two
necessarily.
things here, if you don't mind me interrupting you just quickly. If
No,
anyone
go
in the
ahead.
audience, first off, if anyone in the audience has a question, I do have the chat up. Go ahead and type a question in if you'd like to. But also, as we talk about some of these things, and for me, because veterans are so important to me, but we talked about the OCD, and we are talking about the PTSD. I always get them confused. Post-traumatic stress disorder, and those kind of things. But then what question comes up to me, what happens when you go into one of your TMM sessions? What do you do? What anybody else
So
has questions, go ahead. But
yeah. So actually what I've done is I have a series of something called triliminals. It's one of my techniques that I've developed. It's basically designed to stop what I call the negative reflexive thought process.
negative reflective thought
Reflexive thought
process.
process. An example of
Okay.
that would be, let's say you get a call at midnight and you don't normally get a call at midnight. What would happen? What would you think right away as soon as your phone starts ringing at 12?
Well, I'm not going to say those words on a recording, but they
There you
call me
go.
at 12 o'clock.
Yeah. Usually it's like, oh, what's wrong? That's usually what people think. They're scared.
Uh,
Someone's dead, someone's in an accident. They don't think that someone might be excited because they won a lottery, or maybe they found out their daughter is pregnant, or
yeah.
first kid or something, or got good news in another way. I gotta, you know, I
Positive
can't put
thoughts.
off telling you. I just have to tell you this great news. But they think the worst. So that's an example of a negative reflexive thought.
Mhm. And I'd be thinking, why are you calling me at this time? What could be that important? But you brought a good thought process. It could be something good that's important, not somebody that's having troubles.
It could be someone who just misdialed. It doesn't have to be something horrible or earth shaking, you know? So the thing is, these triliminals are designed to stop that and to help people recover quicker. So what I've done is, when I first came out with triliminals in 2009, people liked them so much that I had people asking me, "Can you make one on this topic, on this topic, on this topic?" Well, I had to start a club. I now have 178 sets of these things.
Wow. Tell me more.
And what I did was, well, here's what a triliminal is in a
Tell us more.
nutshell. Everything
Right.
you're going to hear is happening at the same time. So you hear shh. That's a mask, essentially. It's 600 different frequencies laid over each other one at a time. And some of those frequencies, though, are designed to be resonant with different regions of your brain, kind of hyperactivate them. Then you're also going to hear a pulsed tone, something like ba 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 ba. That tone is what's called the brainwave entrainment frequency. That's the tone your brain is going to start, your neurons are going to start mimicking, pulsing at the same rate. The frequency that that particular sound is at, how many times a second it pulses, ba, 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 elicits a response in the brain called LTP. LTP stands for long-term potentiation. Basically, the brain's ability to form memory pathways or neural pathways. With it, information gets stored. Without it, it goes in one ear and out the other. So we have the mask, we have the stimulation, we have the brainwave stimulation to put you in the right state of mind so you can form memory pathways. And then I speak to you in your left ear with affirmations in the form of you are, not I am, but you are, in the left ear for the right hemisphere of your brain, in the right ear for the left hemisphere of the brain, and in the center for both hemispheres of the brain. All of this happens at the same time. And what it does is it serves to alter the way we naturally think in a negative way. So it helps us to stop that negative, reflexive, repetitive thought process, but it also helps us to recover faster when we do experience that, when we do experience something that is stressful or anxiety inducing. So what I did was I went through and I used a protocol that I designed in AI to pick out of my 178 triliminals a set of 25 triliminals that can be used to help people with, theoretically, with PTSD and depression.
Mhm.
So basically the concept is, now these are half-hour recordings, so obviously you can't listen to all of them every day.
Right.
25 recordings, do the math. That's a lot of listening. That's 13, what is it, 12 and a half hours or something of listening. You can't do that. But what you do is you listen to one, two, or three, depending on how much time you have. And then you listen to what's left after. So the first day, you might listen to, say, two. The second day, you'll pick whatever you're going to listen to from from the 23 that are remaining. Let's say you listen to three that day, then the next day you listen from the 20 that are remaining, and so on and so forth until you get down to zero. Then you just recycle. You do the same thing over again. Doesn't matter which recordings you listen to, in what order. It just matters that you mix them all together and you go through them. And this helps to condition the brain to change that reflexive thought process. Post-traumatic stress is literally a trigger. And that's interesting that it would be a trigger considering a lot of the people who suffer from it are not just military personnel, but a lot of them are. And what happens is these thoughts trigger these thoughts that just keep running over and over and over and over again. And it wears people out and it depresses people and it makes them sick and all these other things. So this particular system, I'm actually going through a guy named Jason McNamara at No More 9 to 5 Club. He's a veteran. And he actually, so if you have any veterans out there and they want to experience this, they feel like a resonance with it, then they can do so at no cost. Just get in touch with the No More 9 to 5 Club. All you have to do is prove to Jason, give him some kind of documentation to show you are indeed a veteran, and we give this to you at no cost.
No more. Is it just
9 to
nine? The
5.
number nine.
Yeah,
TO
No More 9
5.
to 5, the number 5
Mhm. I just put it
club
in the chat.
.org. But
Oh,
if they
okay.
do a search for No More 9 to 5 Club, they should find it. And it's the No More 9 to 5 Club. Yeah.
I'm
If you
sorry.
want, I can put the link in the email or in
Okay.
the email. I can put the
In the
link in the
chat.
chat so
That'd
people
be
can
great.
find it. Yeah. But if people actually go ahead and they contact Jason and they get vetted as a vet, then they can have it for nothing, even though we're probably going to sell it for about $300 to others.
Okay.
But I'm sick of how veterans get treated. You know, one thing that bothers me is that in the movies, military personnel are heroes. But when they're in real life, I don't even want to look at you.
Right.
It doesn't, there's a disconnect there that just doesn't make any sense to me.
That's a major problem that we have today, that they, as you mentioned in the movies, when I see them on the street or when I hear someone say that they've served, I tell them thank you for your service, because that
Yeah.
is so awesome to me. And well, my father was in World War II. I've got a cousin that's a colonel. I've got a lot of family military, so they can understand it more. I signed up for the Marines but got injured in an accident, was not able to perform, head injury. But that appreciation for our veterans, which is what I'm designating today to them. It's why I'm excited that you're bringing some of these things out on the PTSD. What can they do? Because more people will be listening to this after today. So that's what I want to make sure it's open to them to learn from this. So they can contact this, the no more 9 to 5 club.org. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And benefit
You know what,
just like you have.
Mark, I've never served myself, but it makes me feel better to serve those who have served.
Exactly.
So at least I'm not part of the problem. And the thing is, I've seen some things in my life that I can't unsee. I guarantee you, military personnel have seen things in their lives that they can't unsee. All the treatment in the world, all my recordings in the world, all of that in the world won't get rid of what they've seen. But if we can help them, like my depression is something I'm grateful for. If we can help them to get a silver lining out of this, maybe they can take that experience and help others as well
Thank
as
you.
themselves, then that makes my life a little bit more worthwhile. My lack of success in my suicide attempts, it kind of gives it more meaning for me.
I'm glad you found this. I'm so glad you found this. It's that I get to know you today. If we were to, if someone on the call, who listening to this later, wanted to try some of this, what kind of expectation should they have? Is it something they talk to you, talk to whoever you assign, whatever it might be for this, or they go to the No More 9 to 5 Club and go through the process? How fast does some of this work? Is this something that can happen the first couple of hours? Is that what I'm
People
hearing?
might
Or
people might notice stuff as soon as the first 5-10 minutes of listening. But
wow,
it's like exercise, you get the endorphin rush, but that doesn't mean you're getting something permanent. So it really It's really like, brushing your teeth. If you don't brush your teeth regularly, the chances are they're going to rot. If you don't exercise regularly, chances are you won't get very many results. If you use this regularly, you're better able to get results. But the kind of results you're going to get, the star of my work isn't me and it isn't my work, it's your brain. Your brain and your mind actually, I believe, knows what you need and what you should be working towards. And because of that, I think that you're your own guru. My work is not designed to tell you what to do or what to think or how to do something or how to think. It's designed to help you to discover what you need to do.
Is it we only have about 5 more minutes left, 4 more minutes.
Sure.
What is it, a learning process? Is it when you're listening to these, is your mind, your brain get into a rhythm? What happens?
It does get into a rhythm. I wouldn't necessarily call it a learning process unless it's people learning about themselves. I think it helps people to see themselves without the glasses that society forces on them. So we see everything with a color. We see everything with a shape that's imposed on us by being told what we're supposed to see, how we're supposed to interpret things. In my case, and in many of my clients' cases, it comes down to them helping themselves, having the ability to help themselves, having the faith in themselves. That's the biggest thing. I grew up in a time where it was talk to an expert. Well, that still makes sense to me today. The only difference is even big stars like Tony Robbins, Oprah Winfrey, Deepak Chopra, they can actually, in my view, only be experts in their own lives. That's, I think, one of the biggest reasons why, you buy 15 books by all these people and you never really change because you're trying to follow a blueprint from someone else and they have good intentions to want to help you. But just because they're rich and successful doesn't mean if you do what they did, you'll be rich and successful. You're too different. You need, here, I'll end on this. Tony Robbins is like 6'8" or something. He's 6'7". He's a giant.
Yeah.
I'm
So
6'1". Let's say Tony Robbins' course is his suit. For the sake of argument, I'm going to call his course his suit. So I go up to him after he gives a presentation. I say, "Hey, Tony, I love what you talked about. I want to buy your suit." And he goes, "Sure, Morry, Venmo me 5 grand or 10 grand or whatever, and I'll go in the back. I'll take off my suit." So he takes off his suit. I give him the money. He gives me the suit. I go home and try it on. I'm going to look like a kid trying on daddy's clothes, right? Now,
true.
if instead I take his suit to a tailor, the tailor measures me and marks the suit up and then says, "Okay, come back in a week and I'll be ready for you." Now I come back in a week and the suit's tailored to fit me. Now I'm probably going to look pretty sharp in that suit. This is, I believe, what is missing in every self-help, every program, every expert has missed the boat on, as far as I'm concerned. I don't think they meant to, but it just seems like a major step that they've forgotten is that, look, all I can be is an expert in my life. And even then, I'm not so sure I'm necessarily an expert. What I'm telling you is based on my experience. My experience is based on my parents, my religion, my beliefs, my actions, what
Our
I had for
cultures,
lunch today,
learning.
my culture, learning, education, what I had for lunch today is different. All these things are different. So do not just take the suit home and try it on because it ain't going to fit you. Instead, tailor it to fit you. If you're still inspired after it's been tailored to fit you to wear it, that's when you try it. And that, I believe, is when you will experience much better results.
Boy, that makes sense. I like what you're saying because I think, as we've
Thank you.
talked about, there are some gaps in our medical system. We're still learning. And
Sure.
thanks to you, Morry, in sharing what you have to help fill some of those gaps that we have forward. And to anyone else that listens to this, especially our veterans, to help grow, can they contact you through your website, Morry? What's the best
Oh,
next step for
definitely.
them?
I
Okay,
am more than happy if they want to talk. Look, I understand I'm not selling donuts or snow tires. Everyone pretty much knows what a snow tire is, even if you're in Hawaii. And you know what a donut is too. almost no one knows what brainwave entrainment is. It can be quite, you know, scary. It can be a little bit overwhelming. It can sound like woo woo, but I assure you that I'm there for you. I always end my emails with "I'm here for you," and people freak out when they find out I'm not just whistling Dixie.
Morry, that's excellent. Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it. We've got your
Pleasure.
morrymethod.com in the chat. Contact me, achievingunity.com, markandtrinken.com. Today's yours. Let's make tomorrow even better. Morry, again, thank you much. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Yeah.
Everybody have a great day. Cheers.
Cheers.